The new King Charles and Queen Camilla were hardly even crowned before another royal feud exploded between her kid Tom and his princely sons William and Harry. The coronation ripped the lid off simmering family hostilities that have been kept under wraps for years, according to a senior palace courtier. The stepbrothers, according to this courtier, are like oil and water. Charles's boys were raised in the spotlight, while Camilla's kids, Tom and Laura, from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, were never in the public eye. The secret conflict was exposed when Tom furiously defended his mother against new scathing attacks by his royal stepbrothers. I bet Camilla is crowing her son became her knight in shining armor. Tom publicly fought back after learning the royal brothers had begged their father to not marry Camilla, considering her their wicked stepmother. In his awful memoir Spare, and of course the follow-up interviews too, Harry clearly called Charles's mistress-turned-wife dangerous, and he insisted that Camilla had been scheming to marry Charles for years. Harry labeled his father's wife as a villain who he says left bodies in the street trying to change the public's view of her as she played the long game to become queen. Harry, who of course has attacked his family since he moved to America with Meghan, even claimed that Camilla sacrificed him on her personal PR altar by leaking negative stories about him and his family. But in a recent podcast, the loyal Tom has spoken out, and he is very critical of the charges against his mother. I don't care what anyone says, this coronation wasn't any sort of endgame, he says. He says, my mother married the person she loved, and this is what happened. Of course, Harry and William have been left estranged after Harry and Meghan ran away from royal duties back in 2020. But for a long time now, it's true that both William and Harry have blamed Camilla for the breakup of their parents' marriage that ended in divorce back in 1996. Charles's ex, the late Princess Di, who passed away in a tragic car wreck in Paris in 1997 at the tender age of 36, once referred to Camilla, saying, there were 3 of us in this marriage. So back in 2005, when their father decided to marry Camilla, William and Harry really thought that it was their worst nightmare, but look what's happened since, says the courtier. Camilla's established herself as Charles's rock. He doesn't and can't make a move without her. She went from mistress to duchess to princess consort to queen consort and now queen, all against the public wishes of Charles's beloved mother Queen Elizabeth, who made her views clear before dying last September. Camilla is now the power behind the throne. Camilla even wanted her grandchildren to have roles in the coronation, while Harry's invisible children, Archie and Lilibet, now living in Montecito, were snubbed, although it could be that they just don't exist. So Tom is a food writer and critic. He's got 2 kids of his own, Lola and Freddie. And then his sister, Laura Lopez, a former art curator, has some twins named Gus and Louie, and she has a daughter named Eliza. The Palace Insider says, I suspect royal titles are next for Camilla's family. Charles seems powerless to deny Camilla anything, and that will only cause more problems. With the bonds between Harry, William, and Charles at a breaking point, another family feud is the last thing the royals need or want. But it seems here we go again. In other news, Queen Camilla does deserve to be the queen. She's the second wife of King Charles. Now, if the king had been married to somebody else, then she would be queen. And if you just can't stop thinking about Diana, well, let's look at things in a fair way. After all, Diana did have her affairs with married men too, and she ruined 3 marriages as a result. I don't like bringing that up, but there are so many people who don't realize that about her. And once upon a time, she even said that Charles should never be king. The late Queen Elizabeth stepped in, and she supported her son, who is intelligent, he's kind, he's honorable, and he understands his duty. The late queen said they needed to divorce, and so they did. And then after the divorce, both Diana and Charles were free to marry whoever they wanted to marry. I don't believe any woman that he chose would have satisfied the Diana lovers. And I was also a big fan of Diana, but at the same time, I want to be fair. Now, if Diana had survived, and if she had gotten married again, I suspect the Diana love would have slowly dissipated over time. But see, the way that she passed away was so incredibly tragic. She was in such a horrible car crash, and she was the one who decided not to buckle up. It really is sad, and it's such a lesson to so many of us who believe that maybe we don't need to buckle up if we're in the back seat. Obviously we do. And King Charles was absolutely devastated when she passed. He went to retrieve her body, and you know what? An ex-husband doesn't usually do that job. But Charles is a kind and decent person. What I wish everybody could understand about Camilla is that she was and still is and will always be the love of Charles's life. But see, his mother and grandmother insisted that he couldn't marry a woman who was not a virgin. I mean, seriously. And Queen Elizabeth was allowed to marry the older man who she fell in love with when she was only 13 years old, because he was the love of her life. The Queen Mother married the love of her life as well, so why wasn't Charles allowed to just do that in the beginning? It always bothered me that the people who were controlling Charles, who had the power in his life, made sure that he did not marry for love. Of course, that was going to end in disaster. They basically decided that he needed to pick Diana because she was young, I mean too young if you ask me, and she was a virgin. Well, most older women were not. Any 20-something woman in those days probably wasn't. And she came from a really important aristocratic family, who also had a lot of problems. Now that Diana is resting peacefully, it's lovely to see the king with the love of his life. I think love won in the end, and we need to celebrate that. After everything that went on in their lives, they did end up together. And Camilla was really badly hurt by her first husband, so of course there was a lot of trouble in that marriage too. Why is it that people don't want Queen Camilla to experience her own happiness? It doesn't cost us anything. King Charles finally got to marry the love of his life after everything that happened, so much tragedy. Love is supposed to be cherished and celebrated. And Camilla, she's a good person. She has been working so hard for the monarchy for more than 18 years now. When are people going to finally decide to embrace the woman who loves King Charles and loves the country with her entire heart? There has been some confusion over whether or not Camilla should be called Queen Consort or Queen. Now, as I understand it, she can be both. Prince Philip was a prince because he was not allowed to be called king, because a king is always going to be more important than a queen, like we see with Charles. A queen can only ever have her husband named a prince. These are the rules. And I'm happy that I got to talk about how wonderful Camilla is. I adore Diana too, but she passed away so long ago. I'm just happy that the king could have a woman who supports him as his wife. And some people are really critical of her looks. I mean, my goodness, beauty is only skin deep. Camilla was always Charles's real choice. Charles is a very intelligent man. And Diana, I don't know. I mean, I don't think she was very well read. She was very compassionate and she did a lot of good in the world, but she wasn't necessarily book smart. They didn't have much in common. That marriage was doomed to end in disaster from the very beginning, and many people realize that, especially the late queen. Camilla is and is going to continue to support Charles in a way that is appropriate. Another thing is, the people who are so quick to judge the king and queen seem to forget that he was a product of his time and the way that he was raised. He was coerced into that marriage. Now, I believe the queen has been a lovely partner to the king. He seems to be a lot more relatable, and this is obvious in his Princess Trust work that he's done over the years. And I also love Diana. This has nothing to do with taking sides. You can like both of them. This is about one person passing and the other person moving on with their life, because what other choice did Charles have? How many of you out there have moved on after a bad split? And how many of your loved ones have moved on after a bad split? I mean, don't you deserve to be happy? Let's remember, there are always two sides to the story, and then there's usually the third side that represents reality. Picking and choosing your synopsis does mean that you have read the book. And you, what do you think about this story? Please tell me your opinion below in the comments. If you think my video is helpful, remember to like and share it with anyone else who would enjoy it. And please subscribe.